Alright, so we're starting some work on the old D100 today. And today we are working on power steering. So this thing has a very unique power steering setup in it. So we got to fix that. Alright, so the steering on these are a little different. So they have what they call power assist. So you have your normal pitman arm. It feeds into this, I think it's called a power control valve, right? It'll do a little shuttle here, and what we blew out is the main hose that feeds the power control valve. So these all feed into steel lines that run up to the power steering unit, you know, and that's attaches to your knuckle. But, and the old saying is, what's old is new again. I think this drives something, especially if you're a Jeeper, that you'll recognize. Check this out. Alright, so those feeds down into the cylinder, which you'll recognize like a PSC system that goes onto your drag link. So that's what they're using, is a power assist, right? So it, you know, they call it right, left hoses. So there's not an actual, you know, power steering box, if you will, fed by the pump. And then this has a, I believe it's a closed knuckle. So it's kind of like, I'm going to call it a Burfield on a Toyota, with kingpins top and bottom. So it's definitely a pretty unique system that they used. Now this is supposed to be a D100, but everything under it says D200. So I've also already started deconstructing this thing. So this hose was attached to this, and you can't buy hoses anymore for a 1970 D200. So we had to have some stuff made. Went to the local hydraulic shop. They made us some hoses. And I'm kind of glad I took it apart because it looks like there was a repair. Someone brazed a hole that was in it. Alright, so there's a couple ways you can bend. You have to excuse the mess here. Very simple tube bender like this. Now they also make the spring kits that allows you to bend. But the problem with these, if you got to have a flare on the end, well then you can't get the tube off. So it really depends on what size tube you're bending. So if you're bending smaller tube, something like this would work for you. So you can just hook that in and you can bend that around. So that would work very well. So what I ran into with this is when you go to bend with it, that when it goes to bend over it, it was tending to want to kink. So when you go to bend, as it goes around it, one, I can only go so far, and it looked like it does a 90 very well, but then if you get in here, you see the kink, right? And there's the issue, it kinks the line. So I bought this version, and it really holds the line very well. This will do quarter, 5/16, and 3/8. And just make sure that when you bend, you got your zero started at the same spot, so that when this goes around, you make it so that I can get this back off of here. You'll see, and I know this because I did a couple, it puts a really nice bend in there. So we've got the right bender we need, so now it's just a matter of, I got too much crap on my bench. Crap slide. Of just kind of laying this out and bending this up and get it hooked up back on, I keep wanting to call it a Jeep, on the Dodge. So far so good. Now I could get these with the female, so you have to run a coupler, right? A union. I'm going to cut it a little bit above the minimum so I don't have to rebend this whole thing just in case. Pretty easy to cut, bend, and flare. Deburr the tube. It's right there. Set that so it's flush. And then you're just going to watch and make sure it doesn't push it out and flares instead. And then you just get that tight, and then it flares your tube. And it's going to mark your tube a little bit. But then your fitting will complete. And then that is the new hose. And in place, let me show you how it works. Alright, so because this new hose is so stiff, it won't bend backwards. I'm going to have to do some modifications. So I'm going to have to make this, remake that hose. I'm going to shorten up this section of it. You can see here, this section is going to get shorter. And there's about a 5-inch section I got to make longer. So I think what we'll do is I got to make the hose 4 inches longer there and an inch shorter back here. And I think that'll be all I have to do. Alright, so it's kind of hard to see. So we ran this new line through, and I got to figure out how to tie all this stuff back together. And then get them all ran back down. It's kind of a cluster, you know what, here. But overall, I mean, for trying to figure out what to do with this thing, I think if I had to do it again, I would just make this a longer steel piece here and just a very short rubber section. The hydraulic hose is much stiffer than the flexible hydraulic hose that was on there. Alright, so that's a pretty easy fix for the hose for the power control valve, right? Something new. That thing only will move like a 1/4 inch, enough to get that valve to shift. But now we have to get the fluid back in the system, and then, well, with any luck, in a couple days we get it inspected. They need some work, right? It's that type of vehicle. But if you enjoy seeing stuff like this, enjoy seeing making brake lines and stuff like that, if you kind of a how-to, or if you just really enjoy the old trucks, as well as Jeeps and everything, keep following along. And leave me a comment, let me know what you think. See if you like the new content, and I'll see you here for some more fabrication stuff.